We're going to change up the pace tonight. A lot of you who are listening to this may be established Jets fans, but maybe you're new to the Winnipeg Jets. What should you know about this team heading into the 2024-25 season? Let's chat about that on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is always free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode. But more than anything, we just love and appreciate your support. Tonight's episode, I wanted to take a step back and do something a little bit different. This is something I've personally never done before. But you know, I've actually been rooting for the Jets for getting closer to 10 years now. I think the time has passed quite quickly, if I'm being honest. It doesn't even feel like it's been 10 years, but somehow it has. I don't know how that happened. It's kind of mind-blowing to me. I've been doing this podcast for 4 or 5 years now. So yeah, the time just seems to fly by, and perhaps I take a lot of things for granted. Every day you see most of the same players. You get used to the cadence of the team, of the front office staff. But for a lot of folks who are perhaps just watching the Jets for the first time this year, there's a lot that's going to be new, even for those of us who are really established fans, those of us who religiously follow the team. A lot's changed since last season and even some of the prior seasons. There's a lot that I think I'm not really sure of this upcoming year, and I thought it might be helpful to do a bit of a different episode, maybe a Kickstarter's guide to those of you who are either brand new Winnipeg Jets fans or perhaps those who are maybe returning after a bit of a hiatus past couple of years. I know a lot of folks have sort of maybe knocked off a little bit of the campaign Jets trail, but now you're hopping back on the bandwagon. Maybe you're excited about the seeming new direction. Before we start off our brand new or perhaps returning viewers guide to the 2024-25 Jets, just wanted to let you know that tonight's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and be sure to use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, starting off our new and returning Jets fan guide, what's different about this upcoming season? Well, I think, the first thing to even talk about is that the Jets have a brand new coaching staff. And I say brand new, although Scott Arniel as head coach isn't exactly something we haven't seen before. It was a thing last season in the interim when Rick Bowness had a couple of instances where he had to either attend to some personal family stuff or some medical emergencies. So, he had quite a few weeks off, actually. And Arniel came in and I thought did a pretty solid job as interim head coach. Now, for those who aren't super familiar, Arniel was kind of brought in a bit ago to support Bowness, and there was an expectation at the time that he might be being seeded and developed as a future Jets head coach. And I think a lot of folks, myself included, were a little bit skeptical about that because his previous head coaching tenure didn't exactly go super well. If I recall correctly, I think his own players locked him out of the locker room, which for a coach has to be, well, that's got to feel pretty bad, right? But he's actually talked about it. I think in some ways, you might even say in a very strange sense that perhaps he's grateful to have gone through that process to learn, and grow as a coach and as a person. Sometimes those trials and tribulations are what help you become who you are in the modern sense. But we're going to have a taste of his approach to the game this year, which I think I'm actually looking forward to it. He's really emphasized the youth. He's talked about bringing and developing a stronger analytics focus to the Jets, which I think is a very welcome change, and it's one that hopefully holds some real fruit for the Jets in the future. And he also has brought in new, assistant coaches to fix the special teams. So I think that the Jets are perhaps getting back to their roots. There's a renewed focus on draft and develop, which I know everyone does, but Winnipeg used to make a lot of its best value acquisitions through this model. And the reason I say that is because when the Jets internally develop, they actually tend to draft well, but they've had trouble getting guys to the pro leagues. And this year, it seems like we're going to start to see more and more of our internal draft picks actually make the lineup over some of the existing veterans. There's going to be more absences for that. Some of the trade deadline guys the Jets acquired didn't come back. Winnipeg has also not brought back Brendan Dillon, so there's an open D spot. There's actual legitimate competition for some depth places, and I think it makes this year very interesting as like a transition period. When bonus first started, I think a lot of us were kind of thinking like a 2 to 3 year competitive window, especially more in the second year of that. And it seems like the timeline's now adjusted since Hellebuck's locked up, Scheifele's locked up, and you don't have to have those two things kind of hanging over your head. Because like as long as Helle is sticking around, this team should have a good chance to be at least a playoff contender for the foreseeable future. So great to have him locked up. But I think going into the season, compared to some of the previous years, this is one of the first years where I have a ton of uncertainty about what this team's going to look like. I think the depth is not great. I think that there's going to be a lot of growing pains as you have more kids filling in spots that have traditionally been held by, maybe not like high-end elite veteran forwards and skaters, but guys who are familiar enough with the league that they can help raise the floor for the Jets. So this year, I think, is really focused on developing this team's future while improving some things in the present, getting to grips with our Neil systems. And, I think this is a year where there's a lot of promise for the subsequent seasons. Maybe not this year, but I think the future for the Jets could be really exciting. Names to know, obviously, we're going to go through some of the established guys, but I guess if we're just talking and maybe spoiling a little bit ahead of there, the new guys on the block, Nikita Chibrikov, Brad Lambert, not necessarily new to most of you who are longer-term fans, but maybe if you haven't been following the team recently or you're just hopping on for the first time this year, these are two of the hot young rookies. They've played one NHL game. Each of them have a point. And so, this is the real chance for them to both make the Jets full-time. And I think if you're going to circle one, you're probably watching Lambert the closest. He has really elite potential. He's a really exciting player. And, this year we're tracking whether he wants to play as a winger or as a center. Also, for those of you who are long-term fans, Ville Heinola, not exactly a name that you're unfamiliar with for a lot of reasons. But for those of you who are first-timers, Heinola has kind of been toiling away in the minors for many years. Last year was supposed to be his breakout season, and then he broke his ankle. He's finally getting a shot as a likely third-pairing candidate this year with the potential to move up the lineup depending on how he does for Arneal. I think if you're excited about mobile, attacking-minded blue liners, this is a kid that you're going to want to watch very closely because he has, among Winnipeg's D prospects and younger players, one of the higher ceilings. I don't know if it's quite what it was when he was drafted, but he has done pretty well for the Moose, and so we're going to see what he can bring to the Jets, and maybe he can help add a little bit more puck-moving ability and, passing ability to the back end that, quite frankly, needs pretty badly. So this year, I think, is a year for change. I think this is going to be a transition season. I think the Jets may struggle if they make the playoffs to advance through the rounds. There's also a chance that maybe they struggle to make the playoffs, period. I don't know that I'm necessarily worried about that part, but it wouldn't shock me, right? I just think that this is a year where I'm not going to expect a whole lot. And I think, measure your expectations, understand that there's going to be a lot of changes, and some of them may take some time for this team to really gel together. So have some patience, get ready. But if this is your first Jets season and this is the first time that you're watching the team, welcome. I think you're actually hopping in at a great time. This is going to be a brand new team compared to what we've seen in past years. And I really feel like there's never been a better time to hop in than right now. Speaking of which, a lot of you are probably wondering, especially if you're new here, who are some of the biggest names to know? Maybe you've seen some of them win awards for, major season recognitions and things, but perhaps you're wondering, what other core players should I be paying attention to? We'll get into that in just a little bit. Before we go too much further, though, I did want to shout out our friends and partners that I referred to earlier at Gametime. When it comes to buying tickets, a lot of you are used to getting hit with surprise fees, big charges, and look, nobody likes that. It sucks. It pisses you off. And you find yourself kind of feeling like you're getting ripped off when you're just trying to go to a concert or a sporting event. I know I've bought tickets to Orioles games or concerts, and sometimes the markup on that after what looks like a $25 ticket suddenly becomes a $50 ticket, and you're like, how the heck did that happen? Well, Gametime totally gets it. That's why they have an all-in pricing option that you can toggle so you can see what you're paying for the full price up front. It's very helpful. It's great. And they also want to help you save time by offering you a brand new feature called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even faster. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's a great feature. It helps you get to your favorite event faster, and it helps you save even more time and money. If you are, of course, the kind of person who also likes to know where you're sitting, they have a great feature that allows you to actually see, a seat view from where you're at, which is great for those of you who are worried about obstructive views. Maybe you want to get a certain bird's eye perspective at the sporting game. Whatever it is, they've got your back. And of course, they come back with their lowest price guarantee and Gametime ticket coverage in case of event cancellation. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL. That's Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Hey friends, and welcome back to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we're just doing something a little bit different. I guess you could call it a bit of a change of pace. We are doing what I would call a beginner's guide to the 2024-25 Winnipeg Jets season. For those of you who are long-term fans, perhaps we've been talking about some of this stuff for a few months, but for those of you who have never really watched the Jets or maybe have taken a bit of a break from watching them the past few years, what I just said earlier was that this is probably one of the best times to get back in to watching Winnipeg. I mean, this is a really exciting season. I'm personally looking forward to it perhaps more than some of the other seasons because I think the direction of the team is finally pointing in the right way. And, for me, that's a big deal. I've always been somebody who really believes in the right process, and I think Winnipeg is perhaps starting to catch on to that as well. If all of their language and press releases and interviews are anything to go by, this team seems to start to get it, which I think is a really big deal. And it's going to start with Arniel hopefully taking the next step for this franchise and getting the team to a different and more progressive future that, kind of modernizes the team to where a lot of the top contenders are. Winnipeg isn't in a spot that's as desirable as a lot of other top-end contenders, and so the Jets have to do things a little bit differently, but that doesn't mean that they still can't be elite. Just think back to 2017-2018 when we all believed that they were going to win the Cup. Now, you're probably wondering, for those of you who are more first-timers or haven't really been paying attention too much, who are the players to know? And of course, it all starts with Connor Hellebuck, right? Best goalie in the league in my mind, two-time Vezina winner, probably should have had a third somewhere in there, and he is, for me, at this point, a lock for the Hall of Fame at some point. It may happen in the much distant future. Hopefully he keeps playing a long time and keeps putting up big numbers for the Jets. But if you're talking about a goalie who has been one of the best of his generation and really one of the best of all time at this rate, especially with how his career continues to evolve, he is carving a name for himself in the Hall. He's still got a good 5 or 6 years left, probably. And, at the end of his career, if all goes well, maybe he even has a ring somewhere in there. I believe that he is one of the greatest American goalies I've ever seen, and just one of the greatest goalies, period. I don't know how he does it. I mean, you always say it's big and boring, and he has some really interesting approaches to developing his game, and some things that he did a few years ago to tweak his core movement and improve some of his base mechanics. And he's become such a steadfast rock for this team. He's gotten the Jets, frankly, to playoff appearances that they didn't deserve. So he's been immense for this team. He is the cornerstone for this whole franchise. And regardless of whatever fancy skaters or amazing players we have, it all starts with him in net. Other guys I think you really should pay attention to, Josh Morrissey. I know we're starting on the back end first, but Morrissey has to be it. His evolution since Rick Bowness came in has been transformative. He's become one of the best blue liners in the league, arguably deserves more Norris attention, especially last year. Last year was probably the best of his career in terms of both defensive impact and total offensive impact. He was tremendous, and he's really become a force and leader on the ice for the team. You probably would not have thought he would be capable of this several years ago, when it looked like he was more of like a second pairing kind of guy, or maybe just a number 2D. But it just seemed like Bones kind of unlocked his true potential. And if Bones did one thing for this team, and one thing only, it would have been worth it to have Josh Morrissey become the defender that he is right now. He's been tremendous for this franchise. Given all of his personal struggles and the really rough things that his family has gone through, you really couldn't hope for this to happen to a better person. So so happy for him. It's great to see him loving and enjoying hockey, and hopefully he adds a ring in there just like Hellebuck. Other guys, I think we've got a whole selection. You've got Mark Scheifele, who has been one of Winnipeg's most successful draft picks. There were times when I thought he was going to become a franchise-level center for the Jets, and there were a few seasons where he was, quite honestly up there with the greats. Sure, you wouldn't really put him in the same tier as McDavid, because no one is. McDavid is McDavid, and he's kind of one of one when it comes to his elite game-breaking ability. But Scheifele wasn't super far off. He's always been a great servant for the club. I think the last few years there was definite frustration on his end with how the team was playing and the direction it was going, and I think he didn't always agree with it. But it seems like he's starting to get back on track, and I'm hoping for him to really become that two-way force he was a few years ago. Do I expect it to happen? Probably not. But, maybe something changes. Maybe Arneal can bring him to an even better place, and they get him back to where he was several seasons ago. But he is still one of our most creative forces. If he finally goes back to the slot on the power play, he's going to absolutely rake it in. And I'm just hoping for a big season from him. I know a lot of us have talked about him maybe not being the 1C compared to a lot of other teams out there, but I still feel like he has it somewhere in him to really be an absolute monster. And you don't have to be the world's best player. You just don't. But you have to be the right one for your team. And I think that's what I am hoping for from him this year. Of course, there's also Kyle Connor. Connor has been, one of the most creative goal scorers on this team. You may notice that he does have some particular notable gaps in his game, but it is what it is. In terms of finishing talent, there's zero question about that. In terms of skating, he's phenomenal at it. Maybe some of the other parts that are still a work in progress, but he is extremely fun and dynamic. I've kind of avoided talking about Nick Ehlers just because I don't know if he's going to be around at the start of the season or even past the trade deadline. I'm hoping that he sticks around, but, it is what it is. Business is business, and he hasn't always been treated the right way by this franchise. So if he does decide to leave after his deal expires or before, I do understand. But he is one of our most creative players. He's a ton of fun to watch, and I think you'll see immediately when he's in possession and skating and making his silly and crazy passes, you'll kind of understand why he is such an exciting presence up front. Another guy that's really due for an extension here, and I'm hoping it's a long-term one, it's Cole Perfetti. That's a name you want to circle for the present and future. He's had some injury-shortened seasons early on, but as he started to really hit his stride in very limited minutes, mind you, I think you're going to see him grow and grow under Scott Arniel, and I think he is ready to become one of Winnipeg's top producers and creators. He scores at a very similar 5v5 rate as some of our most elite talents, and I think he is one of those names that you just want to circle for the present and future, and I think this year is going to be a breakout season for him. Otherwise, I think you've got a whole great cast of guys. Adam Lowry has been, the brand new captain over the past couple of years, and he's really done a great job. He's such a force on the ice. He's kind of your enforcer, but also he's just really good at being a two-way play driver. You've got household names like Nita Ryder and Appleton who have, been hardworking players. You've got some guys in the depth roles like Barron, Gustafson, all those fellas who are certainly putting in a tough shift. Iafallo arrived recently with Velarde. If Gabriel Velarde this year has a really big season, watch out. He's been anchoring the top line recently with Scheifele, and assuming that he stays healthy and he actually gets to play with Ehlers and Scheifele, he could be in line for a very big season. So a lot to get excited about. Obviously, the defense is going to be, your usual standbys, DeMello, Sandberg, Miller. There's a lot here, right? I think this team is going to be fun. I think I'm looking forward to it. But, a lot of these names are guys who are maybe familiar outside of Winnipeg to some folks, but I don't know. It seems like the Jets don't always get the most recognition, partly because of their remoteness, partly because people just don't seem to respect the team the way that they should. But, let them sleep on the Jets, and I hope we surprise them all. Now, speaking of the upcoming season, the Jets have actually put out a press release with some of their events. Thought I would talk about some of the the standouts, maybe some of the exciting giveaways and things that you might want to, kind of take advantage of. I'm kind of laughing and sort of wishing that I was up in Winnipeg for some of these giveaways. There's some really cool stuff this year, some new kinds of items that we haven't really seen before, and some of the more traditional sorts of celebrations that you see other teams doing. So we'll talk about that in just a quick moment. But again, just wanted to say thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day. While you're at it, make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. All part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Hey friends, welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us real quick as we're just wrapping up tonight's episode with a little bit of a discussion about Winnipeg's upcoming promotional nights and giveaways. This year, I think that there's actually some pretty cool stuff, some fairly unique things that the Jets really haven't done before. I think that that's pretty cool. I think I'm kind of excited about some of the giveaways. It's a shame I don't actually live all that close. I live in Baltimore, so I'm a little far. I would like to take advantage of this more often, but for those of you who get to go to Jets games, please grab some fun stuff in my absence, and hopefully you can get some really cool giveaways. But the first real big thing to pay attention to, of course, is the home opener. That's going to be October 11th, and there's going to be a truck giveaway, which I think all of us could use a little bit of headwear heading into what should be a chilly fall and winter. And then on October 18th, you've got Hellebuck Night, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if you've been watching the Jets social medias, but it feels like Hellebuck has been pushed on everything this offseason. Lots about his fishing, which is really, really quirky. I don't remember them ever promoting a single player like this the way that they have with Hellebuck, which is kind of cool. He actually, in my mind, really deserves it. He's been like our franchise cornerstone, and in celebration, they're giving away a limited edition pennant to the first 5,000 fans. November 3rd and November 9th, you've got two back-to-back pretty cool events that deal with some color. The first is, of course, Pride Night, which they usually have a special colorful jersey with some fonts and stuff. I forget if that's permissible this year. I think it is. Somebody may correct me if I'm wrong. I know that they had the tape thing, and then there was like a whole back and forth, and I forget if they've sort of recanted that, but Either way, the Jets always do Pride Night really nice. Winnipeg is one of those teams that always really embraces the community and embraces folks and makes it an inclusive space. So I think that's really important. I think it's good for the Jets to do that, and I really appreciate it. On the 9th, you've also got a 90s night, which there's going to be a neon snapback giveaway to the first 5,000 fans. They really like that 5,000 quota, but a neon snapback actually sounds really cool. I may actually have to ask somebody if they can get me one. I might have to buy one. That seems like a really fun hat, and when the Jets do specialty stuff, it's just always kick butt, right? I mean, they always do really cool designs. And actually, on the 19th of November, they also have a Canada Life Center 20th anniversary celebration with a commemorative coin to the first 5,000 fans. There's a lot of giveaways, a lot of cool things this year. Some stuff that's really making me jealous that I'm not able to get up there. But through December, you've got some of the usual standbys. Hockey Fights Cancer on the 3rd. On the 8th, the Jets always have a nice Canadian Armed Forces Appreciation Evening. On the 12th, the newer South Asian Heritage Night comes back. That's one of my personal favorites. I wish I could get to that game. On the 21st, you've got your holiday game. Not sure what they're going to do for that. I don't know if there's anything particularly special for like Christmas/Boxing Day, but maybe they've got something pretty interesting. The new year kicks off with Ukrainian Heritage Night on January 2nd, followed by a cooler bag to the first 5,000 fans on January 7th. January 11th, you've got Filipino Heritage Night. Then on the 18th of January, you've got an interesting one. You've got Country Night, which is, I think, a new one for the Jets. And they're actually giving away a Jets-themed cowboy hat, again, to the first 5,000 fans. That one, I don't know that I necessarily need, but still kind of fun all the same. On the 26th, you've got Wasak Night coming back again. I love this. This is always one of my favorite special events. I would love to attend one of these Indigenous nights. I wish I could. It's unfortunately a little far for me, but pretty dang cool. And the Moose always have the best First Nation inspired designs for their jerseys. So something to keep an eye out for. February 24th is actually going to be the next special promo night, which is almost a month later. You've got Black History Night, followed by a few weeks later on March 11th. I think this is the first time the Jets are doing this, but it's celebrating in Women in Sport Night. Forgive me if they actually did it one other season, but I feel like this is a new one this year. On the 30th, you're also going to have the return of Jerseys Off Our Backs, which if you like stinky one-game wonders for your closet, you're going to get one here. Just know, if you do happen to win one, you do want to run it through the wash. Gently, mind you, gently. Don't dry. Just use cold water and stuff. After that, you're basically looking at Parkinson's Awareness Night later in April, and then a Fan Appreciation Night on April 16th to just about close out the season. So lots of fun stuff this year. I'm personally dreading that I don't get to go up to Winnipeg all that often. I am hopefully going to try and make it up this year, maybe for one of these themed nights. I've never been to a Jets themed night. I only had the privilege of joining for the playoffs, which probably worth it, I guess, the trade-off there. But let me know if you're thinking of going to any of these theme nights. Let me know which giveaways you're going after. Drop them in the comments below or at my social medias at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. For tonight's episode, though, that's going to be all the time that we have. Thanks so much for listening and, of course, making us your first listen. We will see you back later this week for more Jets coverage. So see you then. Have a great night. And as always, go Jets go.